quick recap of all those Pokemon is on the screen here. What was kind of not evident at the time, but realized later, was that Sun offense was extremely good. It cleared, I believe, every single raid with the exception of Gyarados. So I don't think that that's going to be the case. I'm pretty confident at this point that we will have mechanics like type inversions, the adaptability shield that increases resistance to a particular type. Those will probably be introduced in some way to make it so that we can't just spam fire type offense, but it still will be very good. You will notice, though, there are plenty of normal and steel types. So we've got Lopunny, Purugly, Stoutland, Steelix, Slacking, Tauros, and Excadrill, all weak to fighting. So that's going to be my secondary recommendation. Obviously, Sun is incredibly good and will probably be used on most of the 3 stars, if not all of them could potentially be cleared. Obviously, super effective type moves are going to do better now that the super effective damage cap is higher than the neutral damage cap, but still can be done. I saw it done for almost every single 3-star raid that has been introduced in the game at this point. So that's still my number 1 recommendation overall. Other than that, I'll go into a few other potential types, things like electric, dark, and ground as kind of honorable mentions that you may want to prepare if you've got the extra time. But we only have really 3 weeks to prep, in that the Lunar New Year begins on January 29th, Wednesday, I believe. Unclear if the event will drop on that exact day or a bit later, but it's definitely earlier in the calendar year compared to last year because it lines up with the lunar calendar and not just a specific calendar date. So there's not a lot of time to prepare. This is going to be like a quick cheat sheet for most. Otherwise, if you've got most of these already done, you can start to fill in these additional types. We'll talk about Sun quickly. It's the best offensive type. It should be the first raid Pokemon that you prepare, just because the raw damage is just insane. You've got massive base stat totals, really great base power moves, and then abilities to boost the damage, plus then the weather boosting the damage itself. So things like Solar Power Charizard, Sheer Force Darmanitan, huge base stats on Darmanitan in particular. The base power of Flare Blitz being 120, Blast Burn 150, Overheat 130 on massive Pokemon like Volcarona just make it incredible. As far as all of these kind of slot in damaging Pokemon, you're going to want to just get them as close to 31 in their respective attack stat as possible and 31 in speed. This Volcarona wasn't made to be too bulky, just 31 special attack, 31 speed, EV'd to match, and then modest nature. You can get away with other natures. I'm sure that I have something like a... You can get away with other natures. Something like this Flareon is naughty, another good budget pick. The best Sun users, of course, are the 4 here: Chandelure, Volcarona, Darmanitan, and Charizard. Charizard's a bit more expensive nowadays, and there are some other options for fire types that you can bring. Flareon is one in particular that I picked up a couple of. It's a bit cheaper. This one's a bit weaker overall. Naughty, only 29 attack and 31 speed. You can get away with it here and there, going a little bit lower on the special attack or attack stat speed too. It's sort of how much risk do you want to accept if you might not hit the damage that you need to, or the speed. I would guess the vast majority of the time it won't be a problem, but I leave that up to you depending on your budget and what you want to make. So overall, Flareon, a decent backup option. Magmortar is another good budget option I've seen used. Huge special attack that could easily replace a Charizard if you don't want to get a hidden ability Charizard. You can also go with the other fire fighting combo starters. The dual types there are great. They do excellent damage. They're not the best fire type attackers. They're not the best fighting type attackers, but they will do both just fine. So Infernape is a good example. Blaziken is another one. You can also go with hidden ability Emboar for the reckless flare blitzes. It's just a little bit worse than Darmanitan, so it's not as good. But if you're thinking about building Pokemon that you can use in either role, definitely recommend those 3 as well. As far as fighting goes, there's a lot of options to pick from. We'll go over some of the best with a little bit of type diversity as well. First that come to mind are some obvious ones if you've been paying attention to what have been used in raids so far. Medicham and Glade, both fighting psychic dual types. The psychic typing is not that useful. We have seen it used a bit, but Medicham takes the crown as the best fighting type attacker in terms of raw damage. This is due to pure power hitting for a lot. It's access to high jump kick. Most of the time, you'll probably only want to click close combat, though. The accuracy problem with high jump kick means it needs some sort of evasion drop or gravity in order for it to hit 100% of the time. Still makes it very good with close combat. Very, very great overall Pokemon. Same with Glade. Sharpness is banned in PvP, but it is totally accessible for us in PvM. So Sacred Sword Gallade is another wonderful option. Really, really great overall. The other 2 I'm recommending are Heracross and something you might already have in a catching Breloom. You can just throw close combat on your Breloom. It'll be great. This one's naughty. I picked it up just to be a raid Pokemon. Heracross gives you the dual typing in bug and fighting. Megahorn does have an accuracy problem, but it is one of the best bug type attackers by far. Bug, not that great of an offensive typing, but is useful for potentially slotting into a Grumpig raid. Breloom is great. It's better to be Technician. I think that this one is just Poison Heal. It is. It would be better to be Technician for Loaded Dice. Bullet Seed, I think, comes out on top over like something along the lines of a Choice Band Seed Bomb. I'll double check the calcs on that, but Breloom, if you're going to make it, try to get hidden ability on it. Otherwise, just use your catching Breloom that you already have. So that rounds out some fighting recommendations. Another thing that you can do, that I do, is I just throw superpower on all of my Darmanitans. Darmanitan just does so much damage. If we just look at the base stats really quick, 140, even though the superpower is not stab, a lot of the time it's doing near cap or hitting the damage cap regardless. So Darmanitan's just a great one to have overall. That can be your slot in for fighting types. Other options include Hitmonlee. It's actually the second best fighting type via Reckless high jump kick. So Reckless definitely boosts that high jump kick damage by quite a bit. The problem is there haven't been that many raid bosses that have called for both fighting type and the accuracy bonus. So I leave it in the box more often. Its close combat potential is a bit lower than the other ones just because it doesn't get the additional boost from Reckless and its base stats are a bit lower. There are some other really good fighting types. The 3 stars I mentioned in Infernape, Blaziken, and Emboar are all really good, as well as things like Machamp. Conkeldurr is an interesting one. It's pretty slow. I guess Machamp is pretty slow as well too. We've seen Primeape get used. Sawk could be used eventually either through Inner Focus or Sturdy. So there's a lot of fighting types that are available. These are the ones that I recommend because they have that dual typing, not Chandelure or Flareon. I've lost the plot here. There's Breloom. But yeah, I would recommend these 4. You can slot in Darmanitan if you've already got it, especially if you're crunched for time. These are a lot of Pokemon to prepare in our very, very short time period ahead of the event. So you can get away with kind of substituting them in as you need. If you look at the raid bosses, you'll notice that Sun and Fighting don't do all that well against 2 of the 4 stars. That's Braviary and Gyarados. So Electric could be a decent type for you to prepare. I'll just go over it quickly. But basically, we have a couple of options. The first option is if you think that you're going to be playing in a coordinated link, the best electric type attackers are Ampharos, Plusle, and Minoon, as well as Volt Tackle Pikachu. I don't have that here. It uses Light Ball. But basically, these 3 are going to be the best, though they require that another Pokemon be on the field with plus or minus. So you don't have to match plus with minus, just another Pokemon on the field with either ability makes them both get a special attack boost. If you don't want to count on your team members, let's say you play solo queue most often, there are other options. Ampharos is good regardless, though you will be getting an Ampharos as a raid reward. You can easily just EV train that up and use that for the remaining bosses that you need to clear in Braviary and Gyarados. Additional Pokemon include Magnezone, Zapdos, Raikou if you have those. Jolteon is another easy one, high special attack there. Then as well, you can easily throw a Choice Band on your Zebstrika, EV train it, and use it for those bosses. So a couple electric types will go a long way. Grab a Magnezone, grab a Jolteon. Those two, you can probably do a lot against both of those electric weak raid bosses. And then down into the 3-star territory, we do have those electric raid bosses that we can use later. If you think that you might want to prepare a few ground types in the off chance that Sun does not work for them, you could prepare a couple of those. Ground as a whole, as an offensive typing, isn't that good. Reason being is that Earthquake is a multi-target move with base power 100, and if it hits multiple targets, it will only be base power 75. There's a penalty for hitting more than one target. So you will potentially be feinting the add, and so one Earthquake will do the reduced damage, one will do full damage, but if there is an immunity like flying or levitate on one side, you will get the penalty both times. So Earthquake is kind of a trap move people don't realize. Still, you can bring Earthquake users the majority of the time. They just hit hard enough against electric types that they do great. One Pokemon that does well against electrics without that damage penalty is Bonemerang Marowak. Just an interesting one I want to throw out there. It's got a pretty high attack stat. It has a unique item in Thick Club, so that makes it not take up something like a Choice Band or Soft Sand, what have you, Life Orb, all of those. Bonemerang hits single target, doesn't have a damage penalty, does have the accuracy problem, but is just an interesting pick. Another single target user is a Sheer Force Nidoking with Earth Power, doing a lot of single target damage. So a couple more options. I would guess you probably don't need a full ground team to beat those 3-stars, but if you wanted to be extra prepared, a couple ground types, though you may already have them, will go a long way. And then lastly, if you think that Sun won't work for Grumpig, or you just want to be extra prepared, the best thing that you could do is grab your already bred Volcarona and Heracross and Chandelure that you have from the other recommendations earlier in the video, and you've got 3 super effective attackers against them. And then you can grab a dark type, something like a Crocodile would work here. Let me hide the image really quick and you can see it. You've got the Crocodile. We've got the dual stab in ground and dark. And if you're not familiar with the dark offensive typing, it's enabled by Assurance, which I don't have on this Crocodile. So cut to a Crocodile with Assurance. Finally, we've got Assurance and Earthquake. Assurance does 120 damage so long as something else has damaged the boss first. If you don't have anything that's going to damage the boss, something like a Honchkrow can take care of that for you. Let's grab one with Sucker Punch and Assurance. Here we go. So something like a Honchkrow will give you the option to enable other Assurance users by Sucker Punching first, and then Assurance will do the full 120 base power. So if you wanted to add 2 dark types, I would recommend a Crocodile because it hits both ground and dark. And then Honchkrow is just a great one overall. It was super useful in Halloween, saw use in Christmas, may see use for this Grumpig raid. Otherwise, just a very good dark type attacker. And then if you really wanted to, it's got a massive physical attack stat. So superpower Honchkrow non-stab, but still will probably do a lot of damage against those normal types. I will talk about support Pokemon quickly just because I know that I'm going to get a bunch of comments about it. Support Pokemon are useful. The only one that you really need to bring multiple of to a fight in most cases is Murkrow. So if you wanted to prepare one, Murkrow is the answer, mostly because of its access to Tailwind and Haze. It is the only Pokemon that has access to both, especially later on in a raid. You may need to do either one of the two. So that's why it's a very useful one to bring as a backup. So that's the only one that I would truly recommend. We did see Sableye get used, though you only really need one to either click Trick or Gravity, or potentially set a light screen or reflect, though they're not very much in vogue these days. The majority of raid bosses, you don't need to set screens in order to defeat them. So Sableye has not been all that useful. For all other support type moves, you only need one of. You can rely on someone else to bring them, or let's say you need a heal block, throw it on a Smeargle really quick. You're good to go. Very easy to patch up quickly. The only one I would really definitely try to prep is the Murkrow here. So that pretty much wraps it up for the video. I do want to make a much more comprehensive one, generally preparing for raids, but I'd rather get something out quickly that points people in the right direction for the Lunar New Year event, especially because we have the evidence from the previous year to make some pretty informed decisions on what we should bring. And hopefully we see some new stuff and see some changes and see what other cool mechanics the developers have in store for us. I know that I'm pretty excited for the Lunar New Year event. I might be able to get that more comprehensive guide out, maybe not in video form, but written form. So keep an eye out for that. I might try to post that as a community post on YouTube. I might start using that as an option. I also frequent Petrowski's Discord, so you can always hit me up there if I've got a guide out, or I will probably post it there as well. But basically that covers what I think most people should have prepped. If you are a new player, you're super crunched for time, just get a fire type team together and you will be able to do a lot of the raids. Join a team. They might be able to lend you some Pokemon should you become friendly with your team members. That's a great option. More incentive than ever to make friends in the game. And other than that, I think that's all I've got for you. Yeah, we'll call the video here. Have a good one. If I don't see you before Lunar New Year, see you in the first raid then for a guide video on the strategy of how to beat probably Lopunny. We'll see. All right, have a good one.